Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 13a of Maseches Taanis. We are 5 lines down on the page, actually 4 lines down on the page. Towards the end of the line it says, Amar Rafram Bar Papa, Amar Rav Chisda. Rafram Bar Papa said the name of Rav Chisda. Kol shehu mishum avel, any day which is out of mourning, so whether it is a fast, as we see Kigon, it says, for example, Tisha B'Av, V'Avel, or someone who is mourning for the death of a close relative. So then, in such a situation, Asur, it is forbidden to bathe Bein B'chamin, Bein B'tzonin. Whether in hot water, whether in cold water, it is forbidden to bathe. So again, Rafram Bar Papa says that on Tisha B'Av, or really anything that is out of an added sense of mourning, like Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which mourns the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, or a regular Avel, a regular mourner who's in the 7 days mourning the death of a close relative. So in such a situation, says Rafram Bar Papa, one is forbidden to bathe both in hot water and cold water. But then he says, Kol shehu mishum tanug, any day which is not out of mourning, but it's out of refraining from pleasures. So a normal fast day, we're not mourning, we are, right, Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning, but another fast day is a day of prayer, a day of supplication. So in that situation, while we're not mourning, but we are refraining from pleasures, so then, for example, Kigon Taanis Tzibur, like a public fast, so then, b'chamin aser, it's indeed forbidden to bathe in hot water, because that is pleasurable. But b'tzonin mutter, in cold water, it is permitted, if a person's bathing to clean themselves off, that would be permitted. Amar Rav Idi bar Avin, Rav Idi bar Avin said, Afanan nami tanina. We learn this last point in our Mishnah. This point that when it comes to a public fast, one is forbidden to bathe in hot water, but is permitted to bathe in cold water. He says that's actually stated or inferred from the Mishnah. So, where do we see that? Because it says, V'noa l'nesamer chatzos. It said we lock the bathhouses. So the Mishnah had said that on the second round of public fasts, where we've stepped up the stringency, so the Mishnah said that one is not allowed to work and can't bathe and can't anoint oils, wear leather shoes, etc. And then it said, V'noa l'nesamer chatzos, and we lock the bathhouses. So he says bathhouses are where you go for hot water. So you can infer from the fact that we specifically lock the bathhouses that it's hot water that's a problem, but cold water would be permitted on these regular public fasts. So Amar le Abaye said to him, what kind of an inference is that? V'i b'tzonin aser, let's say it was true that cold water is also forbidden on fast days. What do you want the Mishnah to say to make that point? He says, should it have said that they dam up the rivers to block the cold water from flowing down? Meaning, there's nothing to do, or that can be done, to prevent people from bathing in cold water. That's why it doesn't say that they did anything. They're not going to dam up the rivers. So Abaye's point is that you don't have a proof from the Mishnah that specifically hot water is forbidden, but cold water is permitted. Maybe really cold water is also forbidden. But there was just no action that could be taken in order to prevent people from bathing in cold water, so it didn't mention any action. Hot water, there's an action we can take. We can close up the bathhouses. That's where you gotta go to get a hot bath, right? But to get a cold bath, you just go to the river. There's nothing we could do about that. Or there's no preventative measure we could take to stop people from doing that. So the Mishnah says you're not allowed to bathe, but then it says, and they would block the bathhouses, but perhaps Abai is saying you're not even allowed to bathe in cold water, but there's just no action that they could have taken to make sure of that. So the Gemara now explains, says no. It says, Amar Rav Shishi, braid Rav Idi, Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, said, Abba hachi kakashyale. This is what was bothering my father, Rav Idi, who had brought the proof from the Mishnah. This is what was bothering him. This is why he felt he had a proof. Because take a look, he says, Tanan aser berechitza. The Mishnah said you're not allowed to bathe. No, why does it then have to say, and they would lock the bathhouses? Or why was that necessary? From the fact that the Mishnah had to say that, so it came to tell you, I guess this question is, why did the Mishnah have to say that? The reason why the Mishnah had to say that was to specifically point out that it's only the hot water that's forbidden and not the cold water. That was the inference that he thought he had, that originally the Mishnah said that it's forbidden to bathe. Now if you read that, so you assume it's forbidden to bathe in both hot and cold. In which case, right, I guess he's saying it would make sense that they would take measures to prevent that. Why does the Mishnah have to go on and say, and they would make sure to lock the bathhouses where there's hot water? Rav Idi, Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, is saying that's what my father was pointing out, was the fact that I needed to specifically mention the bathhouses was to highlight, no, it's specifically the hot water that's the problem. When the Mishnah said you can't bathe, it was specifically in hot water that you can't bathe, but in cold water is permitted on public fast days. That was the proof that Rav Idi sought to bring from our Mishnah to this halacha that was taught by Rafram Bar Papa in the name of Rav Chisda. The Gemara now says, Lema misayele. Maybe we have a proof to Rafram Bar Papa, in the name of Rav Chisda, to the other halacha that he taught. The first halacha that he taught was that an avel, or a mourner, and on Tisha B'Av for everyone, it is forbidden to bathe both in hot water and in cold water. So the Gemara says, maybe we have a proof to that. Because it says, Kol chayvei tfilos tovlin kedarkan. Those who are obligated to be tovel, to go to the mikveh. So for example, a woman who's a nida, and now she's finished up her days, and now it's the leil tefillah, it's her due date for her to be tovel, or after she has a baby, a yoledis. She was tmeya, she was ritually impure, and now she's pure, so she has to go to the mikveh. So if she's a chayvei tefillah, if she's obligated to be tovel, so the halacha is that you could be tovel kedarko, meaning you can go to the mikveh, bein b'Tisha B'Av, bein b'Yom Kippur, b'Yom HaKippurim. Both, it's permitted on Tisha B'Av and it's permitted on Yom Kippur, even though normally you can't bathe on those days. But someone who is obligated in Tevilah is allowed to do their Tevilah, their immersion in the mikveh. Now, what kind of water are we talking about? Bimai. Ilema b'chamin. If it's telling you it's coming to permit you, the woman, to be tovel, to do her immersion in hot water. Says the Gemara, Tvila b'chamin mi'ika? Is there such thing as a hot mikveh? She'uveninu. That would mean that the water is drawn. The halacha is that mikveh water cannot be drawn. It can't be first put into a pot and then put in the mikveh. It has to be direct rainwater. So it can't be first containing a vessel. And how do you heat up water? Well, you need a pot, a big pot, and you gotta heat it up. So it can't, in this halacha where it's talking about the laws of Tevilah, it's saying a woman is allowed to be tovelet, she's allowed to immerse herself on Tisha B'Av, if it's her night, if she's obligated. So it's gotta be talking. It can't be talking about in hot water. There's no such thing as going to a mikveh in hot water in those days. So that would mean they're drawn, and you can't use drawn water for the mikveh. So rather, it must have been cold water. And this brisa, the statement was coming to say that a woman a person who's obligated to be tovel, to go to the mikveh, is allowed to go to the mikvah on Tisha B'Av in cold water. But the implication is, chayve tvilosin, someone who's obligated to can go in the cold water, but in a shachrina lo, but other people can't. So we can infer from here that under normal circumstances, one is not allowed to immerse or bathe in cold water on Tisha B'Av. So this is a proof to this halacha that an avel, someone who's mourning, or a person on Tisha B'Av is not allowed to bathe neither in hot water or in cold water. So Amar Rav Chana bar Katina, he said, no, we need this halacha for the hot springs of Tiberia, of Tiberias. He says you could have hot water, a hot mikvah. In hot springs, that's a kosher mikvah, and it's hot. So it could be that it's specific, that really it's only forbidden to bathe on Tisha B'Av in hot water, but cold water is permitted. And what this brisa is coming to tell me is that even hot water is permitted if one is obligated in tevilah. If it's a woman's night to go to the mikvah, so then if she has a chayve, if she's obligated to be tovelas, to immerse, so then she's allowed to do it even in hot water, such as, where do you find such a case? The hot springs of Tiberia. The Gemara says, Yihachi, if that's so, if it's talking about that case, Ema Seifa. So let's examine the second half of this brisa. The second half says, Amar Rav Chanina skana kohanim. Rav Chanina said back, he said, no, a person should not go to the mikvah on Tisha B'Av. Why? Kedayu beis Elokeinu la'abed olav tefillah pam achas bashana. The Beis HaMikdash, the holy temple, is worthwhile for someone to give up, to lose out on a tefillah once a year. Meaning, it's true, there's an obligation to be tovalis, to go to the mikvah here, but we're mourning the Beis HaMikdash. Says Rav Chanina, it's worthwhile once a year for the Beis HaMikdash, for the mourning of the Beis HaMikdash, to give up on being toveles, immersing in the right time when one is obligated. Just delay it. Now, says the Gemara, V'i amart bitzonein mutter, if it was true that you're allowed to immerse in cold water on Tisha B'Av, and all that this brisa, the first opinion of the brisa was coming to permit, was hot water, was chame taveria. So then, when Reb Chanina argues on that, what does he mean that it's worth it to lose out on a tevilah? Yirchatz bitzone. Let her, or let the person go bathe in cold water. Meaning the conversation doesn't make sense. If it was true that it's forbidden to bathe even in cold water on Tisha B'Av, then the Tanakama, the first opinion, would be saying that we make an exception on Tisha B'Av, even though it's Tisha B'Av, we'll make an exception for someone who is obligated in tevilah, that they could go and be tovel in cold water. And Rabbi Chanina would be saying, no, it's the Beis HaMikdash. It's worth it to not be tovel at all, for the Beis HaMikdash. That would make sense. That conversation would make sense. But if it's true that anyone's allowed to bathe in cold water on Tisha B'Av, and the Tanakama, the first opinion here, was only coming to tell us that you're allowed to bathe in, that someone who's obligated in tevilah is even allowed to immerse in hot water, then when Rabbi Chanina argues on that, he shouldn't say it's worthwhile to miss out on your tevilah for the Beis HaMikdash. He should say it's worthwhile not to bathe in hot water, just bathe in cold water, because that's anyways permitted. So it seems, based on the Seifa, that even cold water is forbidden, and that's why Rabbi Chanina is saying it's worthwhile to give up a tevilah for the Beis HaMikdash, because there's no way that you can do it in a permitted manner, because both hot and cold are forbidden on Tisha B'Av. So to that, the Gemara says, no. Amar Rav Papa says, Ba'asra de lo shchiach tzonein. We could be talking about a place where there's no cold water available, only hot springs. right? There's no rivers, no mikvah. There's just a few hot springs. In such a place, the question is, what do you do? Normally, it's forbidden for one to bathe in hot water on Tisha B'Av. Says the Tanakama, but if someone is obligated in Tvila, so they could go, because first, that's all that's available is hot springs, right? But it's fine, because they're obligated, they should go. And Rabbi Chanina comes and says, no, they shouldn't go. It's worthwhile for the Beis HaMikdash to lose out on Tvila. But that's because there's no cold water available. If there was cold water available, so then everybody would agree that it's fine to go and immerse in the cold water because one is allowed to bathe in cold water on Tisha B'Av. That's the refutation of the proof. So just to go through it, we to just walk it back, the Gemara, the Gemara thought to bring a proof that that you're not allowed to bathe in cold water on Tisha B'Av. It said we have a brisa. The brisa says that anyone who's obligated to be tovel is allowed to do so on Tisha B'Av, even though normally you're not allowed to immerse on Tisha B'Av. The Gemara said, what kind of water are we talking about? We can't be talking about hot water because there is no immersing in hot water. You can't go to a mikvah in hot water because that would be drawn water. So it's talking about cold water. And it's saying that only someone who's obligated is allowed to go into the cold water, but otherwise cold water is forbidden. We have a proof that cold water is forbidden. The Gemara said, no, it could be we're talking about hot springs. It could be we're talking about where there is hot water available. There is a hot mikvah because there's hot springs. It's not drawn water. And that's what it's talking about. And maybe really cold water is always permitted, and this was coming to allow even hot water. The Gemara said, wait a second, if it's coming if cold water is normally permitted, so what did Rabbi Chanina mean? There's no, it's worthwhile to lose out on your tefillah. Who says you're losing out on tefillah? Just go in cold water. What do you mean by that? It must be that cold water is forbidden. The Gemara said, no, it could be talking about a place where there is no cold water available, but maybe if there was, it would be permitted. So we don't have a proof that cold water is forbidden on Tisha B'Av. The Gemara continues, it says, Tashma, come and listen. Kisha amru aser b'malacha. When our Mishnah, when it said that you cannot do malacha, you can't work on fast days, lo amru ela b'yom. It was only speaking about during the daytime of the fast, ava b'layla mutter, but at nighttime it's permitted. So you might remember from the last Amud, at the time, the Gemara seemed to be making an assumption that this was the case, and it had questions based on this. The Gemara previously assumed that you're not allowed to, the Mishnah saying you're not allowed to work on the fast. The Gemara seemed to know already that was only during the daytime, but not at night, and it had questions based on this, like, you should even be forbidden to work at nighttime of the fast if we learn it from Shmini Atzeres, etc. That was a question the Gemara had asked previously. The assumption came from this brisa. Now the brisa, here it's more of a side point. The brisa says that when it said that you're forbidden to do malacha, to work on a fast day, that was only in the daytime, but not at night. But at nighttime, one is allowed to do work. Ukisha amru aser ben ilas sandal. And when the Mishnah said that you're not allowed to wear leather shoes, lo amru ela be'ir, that's only if you're in town, if you're in the city. Aval b'derech, but if you're traveling, mutter, you're allowed to wear proper shoes if you need to travel somewhere. Ha-ketzad, what's the case, or how do you do that? Yotzei l'derech noah, when you get out on the way outside of the town, you put on your shoes. Nichnas la'ir, but as soon as you enter the town, cholet, you should take off your shoes. Ukisha amru aser b'rechitza, and when the Mishnah said that you're not allowed to bathe, lo amru ela kol gufo, they only meant you can't bathe your entire body. Aval panav yadav v'raglav, But your face, your hands, and your feet, mutter, you are allowed to wash your face, hands, and feet on a fast day. V'cheinata motzei b'menuda uva avel. And says the Brisa, and the same is true for a menuda, someone who has been excommunicated from the community. So apparently certain laws of mourning apply to such a person. Uva avel, and to an avel, someone who's mourning a lost relative. The same laws apply. That's the Brisa. Now, ma'elav akulu, isn't this line, this last line that said that the same is true for someone who's excommunicated or for an avel, a mourner, isn't it going back on everything? Meaning all the things we just said, the same is true for someone who's excommunicated and a mourner. So what we said about shoes, what we said about work, what we said about washing, all of that is true for the menuda and the avel as well. So if that's so, it says, what is the case of the bathing that we're talking about? Right, when it said that you are only not allowed to wash your whole body, but you're allowed to wash your face, hands, and feet, what kind of water were we talking about? If we were talking about hot water, panav yad avrago misharu, is an avel, is a mourner allowed to wash themselves in hot water? V'ha'amar Rav Sheshes said, Avel asur lahoshit etzbo b'chamin. An avel, a mourner, is forbidden from even sticking his finger into hot water. So, for washing seemingly, but an avel cannot wash themselves in any hot water, not even their finger. Rav Sheshes said. So if that's the case, so then, when it said that you are allowed to wash your face, hands, and feet, it couldn't have been talking about hot water, because you can't even put your finger in hot water if you're an avel. Elolav bitzone. So we must be talking about cold water. And what do you see? You see that you can only wash panav yad avrago, your face, hands, and feet in cold water, but you cannot wash your entire body in cold water. So it's a proof to well, it seems to cut both ways. On the one hand, we see that indeed an avel, a mourner, is not allowed to bathe in cold water. And we also see that on a Taanis tzibor, on a fast day, a person is also not allowed to bathe in cold water. So this is actually going to be a contradiction to Rafram Bar Papa. Rafram Bar Papa, in the name of Rav Chisda, had said that an avel is not allowed to bathe in hot or cold water. Okay, this is fine. This is consistent with that. But then he said, but on a Taanis tzibor, on a public fast, where it's just mishum tanug, it's just refraining from pleasure, you're not allowed to bathe in hot water, but you are allowed to bathe in cold water. But we seem to have deduced here that, in fact, it said you can't bathe your whole body, but you could bathe your face, hands, and feet, and that was talking about even cold water. So this is a question on Rafram Bar Papa. You see, even on a regular fast, you cannot bathe your whole body in cold water. So the Gemara says, no, really, it's talking about hot water. And but you have a question because it says that the same rules apply for a menuda, someone who's excommunicated, and an avel, a mourner. And if the same rules apply, well, we know that the rules for a mourner are that they can't use hot water at all. And this is saying that they could use water to bathe their face, hands, and feet. So it must be talking about cold water. That was our question, and we see that cold water is forbidden even on a regular fast. So the Gemara says, no, asharakai. That was going on the other things of the Brisa. when it said that the same rules apply for a menuda and an avel, it was saying the other things the Brisa apply to a mourner and an avel, but this law of washing doesn't apply to a mourner and avel because they're even more stringent. Meaning, read the Brisa like this. The Brisa says that it said it's forbidden to work. That's during the day and also at night. So that doesn't really apply so much to an avel because they're not going to be any different at night. But let's say the shoes. It said you can't wear shoes in town, but you can wear it when you're traveling. So that would be true for an avel also. But when it says that these halachos of bathing, and it says you can't wash your whole body, but you can wash your face, hands, and feet. So that was talking about hot water, we're saying. On a regular fast day, you can't bathe your whole body in hot water. In cold water, you could. And an avel is even stricter, but it's not talking about an avel in that line. When it said that the same is true for an avel, that was talking about the other things in the Brisa. The Gemara continues and says, Tashma, come and listen. Another Brisa. Dam Rabbi Abba HaKohen Mishum Rabbi Yossi HaKohen. Rabbi Abba HaKohen said in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaKohen. Maisa u'meisu banav shel Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Chanina. It happened that the sons of Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Chanina died. V'rachatz pitzonin kol shiva. And he bathed in cold water those 7 days. Or bitoch shiva, it should really say. Within those 7 days, during the 7 days of mourning, during his avelus, he bathed in cold water. So this is a question on Rav from Bar Papa, the name of Rav Chisda. You see that a mourner is allowed to bathe in cold water. So the Gemara says, no, there was different. Hasam kishitakfu avelav. That's where he had double avelus, one after the other. As it said, it's like his sons died. So they didn't die at the same time. They died one after the other. And it would have been an extra long mourning period. Because it doesn't say how long after one after the other. But the point is, it was a few days into his mourning. And then it would have extended the mourning period. It did extend the mourning period even longer. So that's too long to go without bathing. The Taanis, as we learned in our Brisa, takfu avelu av zeh. If this happens, that a person's mournings come one after the other, and there's no chance to bathe in between, because there's no in between. So then, hich bitsaro, meko batar. If a person's hair gets very heavy, it's been growing, they can be lenient and cut their hair with a blade, with a razor. Umechabes kisuso b'mayim. And they can do laundry, they can wash their clothes. And the Gemara is saying they can also bathe in cold water. Now, Amar Rav Chisda, bitar avalo b'misparayim. When it says that you can cut your hair, you have to use a razor and not scissors. And this is different than shaving. Shaving you can't do with a razor, but cutting your hair, so it works better with scissors than with a sharp blade. And because he's in mourning, so we want him to do it sort of with a shinoing, a different way, he's supposed to use a razor, not scissors. B'mayim v'lo b'neser v'lo b'chol. And he can wash his hair with water, but you can't use neser, which is some kind of ancient soap type of thing. V'lo b'chol, not sand. Sand was apparently also helpful in cleaning. You shouldn't use soap, basically. Just water. But again, there's no proof from the fact that he used cold water that an avel is allowed to use cold water. This was an exception because he had one avelus after the other. One more line with the Gemara. Amar Rava. Rava said, Avel mutter lirchot pitzonin kol shiva. An avel is allowed to bathe in cold water during his shiva, during his mourning period, midi dahava bisra v'chamra. Just like he's allowed to eat meat and drink wine. Now this is not necessarily going to be the practical halacha. Rava is arguing on the opinion of Rafram in the name of Rav Chisda that we started with, who said that an avel is not allowed to bathe in cold water. Rava is saying an avel is allowed to bathe in cold water, and we'll examine that opinion further next time.